First on News 2 at 6 o'clock, this convicted sex offender charged with 49 counts, but convicted of 4 of those is getting ready to get a shot at freedom. Good evening. He molested little boys in 2 states, and this week the parole board will decide whether to set him free.
Todd Michael Duquette still has 19 years left on his sentence. As Chief Investigator Chris Nakamoto reports, victims' families demanding the parole board do the right thing.
That's right. They don't want Duquette released. Court records show he already had 1 shot to do things right, and when he moved to Texas, he was convicted of indecency with a 10-year-old. In addition to the family's concerns, criminologists say you can't break the habits of pedophiles. Pedophile Todd Michael Duquette is serving time at Angola for what he did to Brandy Melissa's 2 brothers back in the 90s. She says Duquette molested them.
He's all messed up in the head.
She was shocked to learn he'll get a chance at freedom this week.
He's already proven that he can't keep his body parts to himself. He was given a chance when he first got charged to go to rehab and not register as a sex offender, which he refused to do.
In 1994, Duquette was convicted. Stemming from sex acts he performed on 5 boys between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with 49 counts, but pled guilty to 4 of them. A judge suspended his sentence, and Duquette moved to Texas. That's where this mugshot comes in. He got caught with a 10-year-old over there.
I have to address the parole board.
Melissa isn't so sure Duquette can be rehabilitated.
He's already proven that he can't be.
They're going after 10-year-olds.
Yes. LSU criminologist Dr. Ed Shahada says in general, sex offenders have the highest rate of reoffending, more than any other convict.
In the case of pedophiles, it appears to be a unique aspect of their sexual identity, of their sexual personality, and it's hardwired.
Documents obtained by the WBRZ investigative unit show the state claims he's been a model prisoner, completing various classes and taking sex offender treatment programs.
And what's going to fix it?
Shahada says, generally speaking, that can't fix someone's urges.
You can't change your sexuality. No prison course is going to change your sexual preferences. It's something that is a unique personality disposition that tends to reassert itself throughout your life.
It's why Melissa is pleading with the parole board to make the right decision. As she says, one of her brothers tried to kill himself some decades ago as a result of the abuse. She had this message for the parole board.
You need to think twice and consider that it could be your child or somebody you love.
We reached out to the Department of Corrections. A spokesperson said Duquette is eligible for good time as a sex offender. Even though he has 19 years left of his sentence, he's scheduled to get out in 2 years due to his good time. They reiterated over the phone that he completed numerous classes and a sex offender treatment program and said the decision will ultimately be up to the board. Duquette is scheduled to go before the parole board Thursday. A convicted pedophile won't be getting out of prison anytime soon after a parole board heard emotional pleas by the victim's family. The investigative unit highlighted the case earlier this week. News 2's Brandy B. Harris was at the hearing today, and it had a surprise outburst by the convict. Brandy?
That's right, Chris. The room was totally stunned when Todd Michael Duquette responded to the victim's statements, saying it was all, quote, totally false. Duquette was originally convicted of preying on 5 young boys. Tonight, while he's still in denial, a family is relieved he's still in prison.
I knew I had to do this because if he would have been granted, we'd be having future victims and having this conversation again.
Brandy Melissa stood up at a parole hearing to make sure convicted pedophile Todd Michael Duquette remains in prison for molesting children between the ages of 8 and 12 back in the 90s, including her 2 brothers.
I knew I had the courage to do it, but because his other victims couldn't be here.
After his original 30-year sentence was suspended, he moved to Texas, where he was picked up again in 1998, this time with a 10-year-old. His parole was revoked, and he was brought back to Louisiana to complete his original sentence. His victims didn't even know he had a chance to get out, but the district attorney's office has been reaching out and giving them an opportunity to be heard.
But they, of course, were passionate about wanting their voices heard and this man not being able to harm any more children.
And Duquette responded to his victims and their statements during the hearing by saying it was all, quote, totally false.
This man has, since the case occurred and ever since, blamed children for his predatory acts upon them.
for him 29 years later to be able to pronounce my name as clearly as he did and make reference to point out me out of everything that was said, that proves his guilt.
Now, Duquette was unanimously denied parole. His full sentence won't be complete until 2037, but the Department of Corrections says Duquette is expected to be released in just 2 years due to good time. Chris?
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Duquette, would you please state your full name and your Department of Corrections ID?
Todd Michael Duquette, 336250.
Thank you, Mr. Duquette. My name is Alvin Roche, and I will serve as chairman today. To my left is Ms. Cheryl Renaza. To my right is Ms. Pearl Wise. Let me explain the process to you. I will read some information into the record. Afterwards, we will conduct a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, one Vinoy will give remarks. If you have any family members, we'll give family members a chance to make a statement on your behalf.
Yes, sir.
At the very end, before we vote, we will allow you to make a statement on your behalf. If there's any victim opposition at headquarters or here at Southern University's Law Center, we'll give them a chance to make a statement. Do you understand the process?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Duquette, you are a second felony offender. Your offenses are indecent behavior with a juvenile, 4 counts, oral sexual battery, 1 count. You were sentenced on July 24th, 1994. You were revoked on July 2nd, 2008. Your sentence was 5 years at hard labor, each count of the indecent behavior, and 10 years for the oral sexual battery. You have a total sentence of 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Your parole date, matter of fact, your parole date is March 25th, 2018. Your good time date, March 28, 2021. And your full term date, March 23rd, 2037. Is this information correct?
I believe so, sir.
We have opposition at the hearing. Would the opposition please stand? Would you please give your full name and your relationship to this offender? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. At the appropriate time, we'll give you a chance to make a statement.
You've been incarcerated, 11 years, with only 2 write-ups. So I want to commend you on a good conduct record. You've had a recent mental health evaluation, which indicates your mental status is within normal limits. So, considering some of the info that we've talked about, I want you to tell us why you believe you should be afforded early release.
I wish to say this, first of all, as far as my participation in faith-based, I'm a strict church member of Full Gospel. I'm one of the prayer warriors, very involved in the prayer team and the revivals they've been having around here, very much involved in ministry, and have been for, pretty much back there at Camp C and since I've been up at the main prison. But as far as why should you give me early release? Well, I don't come as if it's a right. I understand it here after 21 years of incarceration. I understand privileges, not rights, privileges. And it would be a blessing to get out there. It would be a blessing to apply what I've learned in here. It would be a blessing to help more people. It would be great to be a productive citizen. It would be great to have another chance at society. It would be great to get a chance to make up for my past crimes. I can't blame anybody but myself. I take full responsibility, have from the get-go, and I'm a changed man. As far as merit, I have conduct, I have behavior, I have heart, I have character, references, but I'm simply humbly asking for mercy, because that's what it boils down to, is mercy.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, we do in the record have opposition that's been expressed. There's opposition. The sentencing judge will hear from the district attorney's office shortly. The chief of police in Baton Rouge also has expressed opposition. During the investigative process, we were unable to locate victims, but I'm anxious to hear from the district attorney's representative in that regard. We also do a risk assessment score, and your risk assessment score on the Tiger, which is a new tool we're using to assess risk, you rate moderate. You're a moderate risk to reoffend. We also do a static 99 risk assessment for sex offenders, adult male sex offenders. And in that category, it's concerning because you rate in the moderate to high category to reoffend. And you were 1 point away from being a high risk. So that is concerning to me. I don't have any other questions of you, Mr. Duquette.
Ms. Wise?
Mr. Duquette, do you have any supervision on your Texas charge? Did you full term on that charge?
On the Texas charge, I full termed in prison.
All right, thank you. That's all.
I was on detainer here.
Sir? Go ahead.
I'm sorry? I was on detainer from Louisiana while all the time I was there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I was in prison.
Okay, so you have no supervision outstanding in Texas as parole or anything?
I went through the Teen Challenge. I went through the Teen Challenge program and graduated. And I went to the sheriff's office. He sent me to the city police, and they sent me to the lady that works with sex offenders. She contacted Miss Murphy, and then Miss Murphy told me to get with her. I did, and she said she couldn't do anything until she heard from Miss Murphy, and that was the end of that. I just lived in an apartment, got out, lived in an apartment.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. That's all I had, Jim.
Let's hear from the victim side. Brandy, would you like to come up and make a statement? Brandy? Address all your remarks to the Committee on Parole and not to Mr. Duquette.
Good morning. My name is Brandy. My family and I are victims of this inmate, and we strongly oppose him being granted parole. In 1993, he was charged with 49 counts of sexual acts with children, and these victims were all between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with indecent behavior with juveniles, oral sexual battery, aggravated crimes against nature, and sexual battery. Under a plea agreement, however, he was able to plead guilty to only 5 of those crimes. He was sentenced to a total of 30 years in prison, but then that sentence was suspended and he was placed on active supervised probation with conditions. Less than 4 months later, the inmate violated those terms of his probation and his sentence was imposed. Although he was convicted of 5 crimes, there are many other victims. My family is among those other victims. In the spring of 1990, he anally raped my brother Josh, who is pictured right here, and my oldest brother Wayne. And he also did them by oral sexual battery. At the time, my brothers were 9 and 11 years old. My family was a fairly normal family, but after my brothers were raped, we were devastated. And even though these crimes happened in 1990, my family is still suffering. After he was raped, my brother Josh developed mental and emotional problems that grew and grew. And when he was in the 5th grade, he tried to kill himself. Wayne also developed mental and emotional problems, and after he was raped, and his way of dealing with it was to act out. Unfortunately, his way of acting out involved raping me. I was 6 years old. And he continued to rape me almost every night until I was 10. It should not be surprising to learn that I still have problems from all of this. In my entire life, I have never known what it is like to feel normal. I know that I now have a completely twisted view of males, and my trust in people has been ruined. My desires and abilities to have a boyfriend relationship were destroyed before they could ever develop. If this inmate would have just stayed away from my family, I think I would have had a chance at a more normal life, even after watching my mom survive a domestic violence attempted murder, which is why we came to Baton Rouge. But that chance was stolen from me. Another victim of this inmate is my mother, who had to endure the trauma of her 2 sons being raped and all the problems that it caused. That's come out right there. What this inmate did completely traumatized my entire family and changed all of our lives forever. My mother would be here today, but she passed away. So on behalf of myself, my mom, my brothers Wayne and Josh, as well as his other victims, I ask that you not grant parole to this inmate. His victims continue to suffer, and he should have to serve the full sentence that he was given. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
And this man has demonstrated by his actions, because he was given the keys to the prison by Judge Irwin. Judge Irwin gave him the keys to the prison. He chose by his own actions when he violated and sexually abused a 10-year-old child in Texas. He chose to open up the jail cell. And while he said to you that he served 21 years, 10 of those years for this crime in Texas, he has served 11 years for this crime. He has in no way, shape, or form served the full sentence.
At this time, Mr. Duquette, would you like to make a closing statement?
The statement is totally false. I didn't do those things to them. I didn't do those things.
Thank you, Mr. Duquette. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Renaza?
Mr. Duquette, I'm really concerned by what you just said. However, let me just say this. I want to commend you on your ministry work that you do and are doing and have done in the faith-based community there in Angola. I want to commend you on your educational accomplishments. However, today, because of what we've heard here today, the risk assessment that has been conducted that puts you above the low category in the moderate to high risk, my vote today is to deny your parole.
Ms. Wise?
Mr. Duquette, my vote is to deny for the reasons already been stated. Additionally, you have law enforcement opposition, strong victim opposition, and you have a history of sex offenses.
Mr. Duquette, you have received 2 votes to deny your request for early release. I must agree with my colleagues this morning, and my reasoning is for the same reasons mentioned by my colleagues. You have received 3 votes to deny your request. Your request for early release has been denied. You have a good day.
From the investigative unit, the state pumped the brakes on releasing a sex offender who molested young boys as we began asking questions today. Todd Michael Duquette was convicted in 1994 stemming from sex acts he performed on 5 boys between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with 49 counts but agreed to plead guilty to 4 of them. His sentence was suspended and Duquette moved to Texas. Well, that's where he got caught with a 10-year-old. Tonight, a relative of the victims he attacked believes it's only a matter of time before people begin asking questions about when the state sets him free.
I don't want another child getting hurt. But with them not keeping him where he should be till his completion, I can't say that that's not going to happen. And nobody can guarantee me that that's not going to happen.
The Department of Corrections says Duquette met the requirements for release, but his residence plan was withdrawn by the landlord. Once he comes up with a new one, he'll be allowed to get out.
Coming up.
Then, a convicted child molester was set to be released this week, getting decades chopped off his sentence.
I'm terrified because you can't rehabilitate people like that.
Victims and their family members stunned that he could be let go. The Department of Corrections with a change of plans after Chief Investigator Chris Nakamoto started asking questions.
But tonight, a sudden change. A sex offender will not be getting out of prison after we started to ask questions about his release.
The man is serving a 30-year sentence for molesting multiple boys in Baton Rouge. And now the investigative unit and Chris Nakamoto with why his release has been blocked.
Sylvia Michael, Todd Michael Duquette received good time while in prison for molesting young boys. He met the legal requirements to get out in just a few hours from now. But when we started asking questions, the state crawfished on his release, saying the residence plan they approved is no longer valid. This is a face of a child predator who until Monday afternoon met the requirements to be released back into society. Todd Michael Duquette raped Brandy Melissa's relatives.
My two brothers.
It came to light while they were at school.
11 days before Christmas, the year it happened, one of my brothers attempted suicide during recess at school. When they asked him why, explained what happened. My other brother coped by molesting me.
In 1994, Duquette was convicted, stemming from sex acts he performed on 5 boys between the ages of 8 and 12. He was charged with 49 counts, but pled guilty to 4 of them. A judge suspended his sentence, and Duquette moved to Texas. That's where this mugshot comes in. He got caught with a 10-year-old over there and was sentenced to prison in Texas. He'd later be sent back to Louisiana to fulfill his original 30-year conviction here. Melissa doesn't think Duquette can be rehabilitated.
I'm terrified because you can't rehabilitate people like that.
Her sentiments are echoed by respected LSU criminologist Ed Shahada. When Duquette went before the parole board in 2019, they denied his parole. Shahada made it clear at the time it's very hard to rehabilitate certain predators.
You can't change your sexuality. No prison course is going to change your sexual preferences. It's something that is a unique personality disposition that tends to reassert itself throughout your life.
This letter states Duquette was scheduled to be released Wednesday and will remain under state supervision until 2038. He told the state he was going to live at 60207 Highway 434 in Lacombe. A quick search of that address shows it appears to be a property that houses sex offenders. 22 currently live there, and 2 offenders have active arrest warrants for being non-compliant. But 4 hours after we began asking questions Monday morning, the state issued this 4-sentence statement saying Duquette will not be released Wednesday. Tonight, Melissa believes prison is the only place for Duquette to keep the public safe.
I don't want another child getting hurt. But with them not keeping him where he should be till his sentence completion, I can't say that that's not going to happen. And nobody can guarantee me that that's not going to happen.
Duquette's 30-year sentence in Louisiana didn't start until after he completed his time in Texas in 2008. The Department of Corrections says the landlord at the facility in Lacombe withdrew the housing plan. And until Duquette comes up with another one, he'll remain locked up.
Brandy, do you wish to speak?
Yes, sir.
On the bill? Okay, go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
For y'all that don't know me, I'm Brandy. I'm up here quite a lot, normally. I support HB 265 because of as of right now, victim notifications about anything regarding offenders comes through the United States Postal Service. And if your victim was a minor, you have to sign for it. Whether that be about parole hearings, about inmates being moved to Rayburn from Angola, as a few child sex abusers have been in the last few years, or anything else that crime victims are supposed to be notified about. In December of 2018, the LC sent my deceased mom a notice about a parole hearing in March of 2019 for a child sex abuser who violated at least 7 known boys in Louisiana alone. Though he was only convicted of 5 so far, he was charged with 49 counts, only pled to 5, and in my humble opinion, should never breathe outside of a penal institution again. Being that he was eligible for a quote-unquote good behavior time at conviction, a unanimous denial of parole in March of 2019 had no impact on his early release date approaching on April 6th. No one on his crime victim notification list has received a notice yet about it, and that is unacceptable. The only way that I know is because I called Rayburn last month and found that out myself. Provisions to this bill would open other avenues of notification and not leave it to just utilizing the snail speed postal service. If this bill were currently law, everyone would know about what happens April 6th, being that we could have been notified as soon as, if not shortly after, the child molester being released early due to good behavior time got a residence plan approved on January 31st. We instead have to wait on the procrastinating officials tasked with mailing notices out to do so, and some notices have to be sent to other states. So victims may find out at the last minute or after the fact about Rayburn's transplant from Angola, who DOC has called a model inmate, being released when we were told otherwise. This is completely unacceptable, and the offender is not the only with victims that are enduring the nightmare that is DOC's current victim notification system. Please, on behalf of current and future crime victims and their loved ones in Louisiana, pass HB 265. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no questions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman Smith, Vice Chairman Bowie, and fellow Louisiana citizens. I support HB 265 because as of right now, victim notifications about anything regarding offenders comes through the United States Postal Service and has to be signed for, whether it be notices about parole hearings, notices about inmates being moved from Rayburn to Rayburn from Angola, as a few child sex abusers have in the last few years, or anything else that crime victims are supposed to be notified about. In December 2018, DOC sent my deceased mom a notice about a parole hearing in March of 2019 for a child molester who violated at least 7 known boys in Louisiana alone. Though he was only convicted of 5 so far, he was charged with 49 counts, only pled to 5, and in my humble opinion, should never breathe air outside of a penal institution again. Being that he was eligible for a quote-unquote good behavior time at conviction, a unanimous denial of parole in March of 2019 had no impact on his early release date on April 6th that was blocked after media pressure on the powers that be. His crime victim notices were mailed from Rayburn on March 23rd. Mine was in my mailbox on April 1st. His release would have been 5 days later. Provisions in this bill would open other avenues of notification and not leave it to just utilize the snail speed postal service. If this bill were currently law, everyone would have known about what Rayburn was ready to do April 6th, being that we could have been notified as soon, if not shortly after, the child molester being released early due to quote-unquote good behavior time got a residence plan approved on January 31st. His sentence completion is 2038. We instead had to wait on procrastinating officials tasked with mailing notices out to do so, and some notices for Todd Michael Duquette have to be sent to other states, so victims likely didn't find out in a timely manner about Rayburn's transplant from Angola, who DOC has called a model inmate walking free, and I assure you, no one in records or even Rayburn Day has bothered to notify us that his release was blocked 2 days before it was scheduled to happen. This is completely unacceptable, and this offender is not the only one with victims that are enduring the nightmare that is Louisiana's current victim notification system. Please, on behalf of all current and future crime victims and their loved ones in Louisiana, pass HB 265. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brandon.
Vice Chairman Bacala, committee members, and fellow citizens of Louisiana. I'm not going to be a tape recorder and repeat much of what I stated why I supported HB 265, but I will try to briefly explain why this bill is needed. I support HB 508 for much of the same reasons that I stated about HB 265. This bill will put a time limit on DOC's procrastinating and sending notices about release to victims some in other states. It would also make them properly inform DAs, etc., so family members of crime victims wouldn't have to, though I didn't mind at all, letting my DA, Hilla Moore, and his ADA know Todd Michael Duquette, DOC 336250, was to be released from Rayburn today. They were not aware before my reaching out to them to let them know, and that is unacceptable. When DOC miscalculates in Rayburn or any other facility, fails to read inmate records before letting inmates walk, and who are not supposed to, victims and their families deserve to be notified. When DOC fails to notify victims and they are left to find out abusers have been released unexpectedly, the anxiety, reliving trauma, etc., can be unbearable, and yes, it's unacceptable. The current 10 days before release DOC guideline for sending out notices of inmate release to victims, especially those who aren't expecting to be released, is not enough time for victims to process. I cannot fathom the shock value the victims of DOC's model inmate child molester being released 16 years early for behaving caused. I fought that happening because the predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. Todd Michael Duquette was confronted by the media for not registering in the early 90s, and he's in Rayburn serving a 30-year suspended sentence because though he agreed to judiciary before going to Teen Challenge that he wouldn't be around minors unsupervised, he went to Texas after completing Teen Challenge and exposed himself to a minor, which got him 10 years stay in one of Texas's hotels for child molesters. The state of Louisiana owes me nothing for the nightmare I can't wake up from after being told Todd Michael Duquette will likely not get an approved residence plan, instead of being honest and letting me know information about community resources are given to even child molesters to help them transition out of prison. It wasn't until after I got home from the interview with WBRZ on Monday that I unexpectedly got an email from supervision officials that Duquette's residence plan wasn't a go anymore, so he didn't leave Rayburn as scheduled today. You heard me correctly. I'd be sitting here fighting to save others on the very day the pedophile who violated not only my mom's fragile trust, but my brothers for life, then 5 more known boys when Jimmy Swaggart Ministries refused to remove him from youth ministry, was supposed to leave Rayburn. I just got the notice on Friday after it was mailed March 23rd. I've cried so much that I'm numb. This pain is nothing enough.
Brandy, I need you to kind of wrap it up.
I'm on my last sentence, I promise. This pain is nothing another victim of any age should experience. We don't want future victims to endure these avoidable nightmares, so please use your vote to be their voice and support HB 508. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Brandy, for y'all that don't know me. Was here last week on 265 for pretty much a lot of the same reasons, with a different inmate at the same prison. This bill would put a time limit on the DOC procrastinating and sending notices about release to victims, some in other states. It would also make them properly inform DAs, etc., as family members of crime victims shouldn't have to do. Though I didn't mind at all letting my DA, Hilla Moore, and his ADA know Todd Michael Duquette was to be released from Rayburn on April 6th. They were not aware before my reaching out to let them know, and that is unacceptable. When DOC miscalculates and Rayburn or any other facility fails to read inmate records before letting inmates walk who are not supposed to, victims and their families deserve to be notified. When DOC fails to notify victims and they are left to find out abusers have been released unexpectedly, the anxiety, reliving trauma, etc., can be unbearable, and it's, yes, unacceptable. The current 10 days before release DOC guideline for sending out notices of inmate release to victims, especially those who aren't expecting offenders to be released, is not enough time for victims to process. I can't fathom the shock value the victims of DOC's model inmate child molester being released 16 years early before for behaving caused. I fought that happening because a predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior. Todd Michael Duquette was confronted by the media for not registering in the early 90s, and he's in Rayburn serving a 30-year suspended sentence because though he agreed to judiciary before going to Teen Challenge that he wouldn't be around minors unsupervised, he went to Texas after completing Teen Challenge and exposed himself to a minor, which got him a 10-year stay in one of Texas's hotels for child molesters. The state of Louisiana owes me nothing for the nightmare that I cannot wake up from after being told Todd Michael Duquette would likely not get approved residence plan, instead of being honest and letting me know information about community resources given to even child molesters to help them transition out of prison. It wasn't until after I got home from the interview with WBRZ on April 4th that I unexpectedly got an email from supervision officials that Duquette's residence plan wasn't a go anymore, so he didn't leave Rayburn as scheduled on April 6th. You heard me, that, and if you've kept up with this bill, you know that I was sitting in criminal justice, fighting to save others on the very day the pedophile who violated not only my mom's fragile trust, but also my brothers for life, then 5 more known boys, when Jimmy Swagger Ministries refused to remove him from youth ministry, was supposed to leave Rayburn. I got the notice on April 1st in my mailbox that I was supposed to sign for after it was mailed on March 23rd. I've cried so much that I'm numb. This pain is nothing that another victim of any age should experience. We don't want future victims to endure these avoidable nightmares.
A Baton Rouge man convicted of molesting multiple boys in the 90s is now walking free, released 15 years before his sentence was supposed to be up. News 2's Bess Casserly spoke to the family of 2 of those victims. Bess, they say this Department of Corrections is making a mistake.
Yes, Sylvia, Todd Michael Duquette has proven at least once before that he cannot be changed, molesting another child during sex offender rehab before serving his 30-year sentence. But earlier this week, he was released for being a, quote, model prisoner.
Yeah, he was a model inmate in jail, but when he's in the free world, he's not.
Brittany Melissa is an indirect victim of Todd Michael Duquette. He was convicted of molesting at least 5 boys in East Baton Rouge Parish in 1994, including 2 of Melissa's brothers.
11 days before Christmas, the year it happened, one of my brothers attempted suicide during recess at school. When they asked him why, explained what happened. My other brother coped by molesting me.
We spoke to Melissa in this interview last year when Duquette was up for early release. However, the Department of Corrections denied that release when the landlord changed his mind about housing him once he was free. Melissa was relieved, but this week, all that changed.
Absolute terror.
Despite a law requiring that victims be notified of offenders' releases at least 60 days in advance, she received an email today saying Duquette was released the day before.
There's nothing that could have stopped them from keeping him to 2038. I don't know why they're taking the risk.
The Department of Corrections says they okayed his release because he served more than half his time and was eligible for good time parole according to Louisiana law. And this time around, he has a place to stay upon release. Melissa says she was advised by Duquette's parole officer that he will not be on an ankle monitor unless the parole board orders it.
Keep your kids completely away from him, and if you see him around the child, turn his ass in, because he's not walking around with being monitored.
The Department of Corrections says Duquette will be living at a place that houses sex offenders in New Orleans. He's also required to register as a sex offender with the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. In the newsroom, Bess Casserly, WBRZ News 2.
Thank you, Bess.